We have a provincial government that's been there for 8 years, a federal government that's been here for over 10 years. BC Ferries obviously should have been able to kind of map their capacity growth. Should they have known years in advance that we were going to need new ferries and been able to create an industrial strategy around that?
C-SPAN actually funded economic studies and presented them to BC Ferries in 2023. I believe it's called the Shiroka Report. It was done by a consulting group. BC Ferries has failed in its to produce those documents that this particular committee has, which I believe gave an argument for doing it here in Canada, an alternative vision. Do you believe that BC Ferries should come clean and submit that evidence so we can have a full conversation about the economic benefits of seeing these ships done in Canada?
This guy's garage. Like and subscribe.
We'll begin our first round of questioning with Mr. Gunn. Mr. Gunn, the floor is yours. You have 6 minutes, sir.
Burke, a question for you. Just if you could ballpark it, how much money would you say on average the average union worker that you represent pays each year in taxes?
I would say that the average wage, if you were to average it out between apprentices and journey people, is probably about 100,000, 110,000. So 30,000.
And would you say it's a good use of their hard-earned taxpayer money to subsidize shipbuilding jobs in another country, particularly the People's Republic of China?
I want to be clear, we're furious at this decision. And I feel that we're in this position where people are saying, well, now the deal is done and it's inevitable and we have to move forward. And as George indicated, they were working with Davy to present an alternative for many years. We were working with C-SPAN to present an alternative for many years. We did not have to be in this position. And to be before this committee and arguing, that somehow there's a sense that we didn't have the capacity to build these ferries in British Columbia is very frustrating to me. I literally took the Spirit of Vancouver Island over on Monday to get to Victoria. These vessels are world class, still operating. Meanwhile, vessels that we're building in other countries have end of lives that are half the age of the fleet that we built here. So it is very frustrating, and they should have been built in British Columbia.
Do you think Canadian shipyards and Canadian workers have what it takes to build these ships?
100%. 100%. And again, I will repeat, we built the Queen class vessels over 40 years ago. Almost all of them have actually surpassed their end of life service date and are still plying the waters of British Columbia. While other vessels that we purchased 20 years later are having failures, right? We are the best in the world at what we do. And our workers deserve to be compensated fairly. And that I will also say that the shipyards we're competing against, it isn't that Canadian workers are making too much money. We are competing against shipyards in Europe and in China where the states are sponsoring these shipyards. They're investing in these shipyards. They are subsidizing these shipyards. So there's nothing sort of extraordinarily expensive about Canadian labor. It's just that their governments believe in investing in those industries.
You mentioned the word investing in the industries, which I find interesting. We have a federal government now that's talked a lot about building Canada strong, investing in the economy. Do you think subsidizing to the tune of $1 billion, thousands of shipbuilding jobs in China builds Canada strong?
As I said, I'm incredibly frustrated that we're in this position where a contract has been given to a shipyard in China to build 4 vessels that we could have substantially built in Canada.
Both the federal government, the provincial government, BC Ferries itself has kind of framed this as there's been a spontaneous need to increase the capacity of BC Ferries. Has this decision that we need new ships come out of nowhere, or should they? We have a provincial government that's been there for 8 years, a federal government that's been here for over 10 years. BC Ferries obviously should have been able to kind of map their capacity growth. Should they have known years in advance that we were going to need new ferries and been able to create an industrial strategy around that?
They knew 40 years ago when we launched the Queen class vessels when their end of service life was expected to be. And I would welcome George to also, weigh in, because his members are right there beside my members doing this work and are highly involved in this.
McPherson, did you want to weigh in on that? I know you've been calling for years for an industrial strategy to build ferries right here in British Columbia. Does it surprise you that we haven't got our act together here in 2025 when you've been calling for this, I believe, for over a decade?
Well over a decade, probably 2 decades. And we worked extremely hard with the East Coast Federation as well to try and put a shipbuilding strategy forward with the federal government. We lobbied hard, we fought hard, we looked like we were getting some success, and then all of a sudden things changed. But as we look at the BC Ferries, and it was, as I said before, if there was a project coming down the stream, they wanted to sit with the industry and discuss with the industry where they were going with that project and how they were going to put it together. And then everybody would just put their gloves on and go to work and get it done. But there's a lot of jobs out there to be had, and people need to put some value back into the industry. The industry is, as Brent says, well over 100 years. We've got a long history of building ships, and they're world class. They last forever. I look at the first 3 that were built in Germany back in around 2003, 2004. Those vessels will never see the life that the ferries built in British Columbia will have. They just won't last. And it's becoming clear now that the problems that it creates. We get vessels breaking down, and we don't have parts to fix them because everything was bought in Europe. So then there's a time frame of how we go and we source out those parts to get that vessel back in service, and it creates a huge problem. So I don't know. I don't have the answer, but I do have the answer. The answer is that we got to put this industry back together the way it's been for the last 100 years. So,
Thank you.
As the Member of Parliament for Victoria, I would like to extend my appreciation to you for your opening comments, in particular Ms. Skidmore and Ms. Burke, which emphasized the important role that BC Ferries plays in providing critical infrastructure to BC coastal communities, and how the interest that all of us on this committee really should be prioritizing is how we can ensure that BC Ferries is able to have the capacity it needs to meet the needs of British Columbians while doing everything possible to support Canadian jobs and Canadian industry through its procurement processes. I also note and appreciate the statement that was just made about how critical federal government support is to sustain Canada's shipbuilding industry. And I'd like to ask you to elaborate on that part with respect to the National Shipbuilding Strategy. Now in its 15th year, this strategy has been integral towards channeling federal government support towards shipbuilding across this country. Could we please hear you speak to how the National Shipbuilding Strategy has supported job creation and the shipbuilding sector in British Columbia, perhaps starting with Mr. McPherson, but I'd love to hear from all 3 witnesses.
The shipbuilding strategy has really brought part of the industry back to a very good level. We've got a lot of apprentices that have gone through, they've got a career in front of them. They're going to do extremely well. We just need to expand on it. It's been good for Vancouver. It's been good for Halifax. I think it's really done extremely well for the industry across the country. So we just need to expand on that. We need to make sure that when the federal government is going to invest in the industry, that they're looking at Canadian jobs. They need to see that they're putting people to work. A lot of young people out there are struggling today to try and find a career path, and this is a great career path. People are able to go and buy their homes and pay their mortgages, buy their cars. It's a great job. But for the federal government to finance projects like BC Ferries to China with absolutely no Canadian content whatsoever is just wrong. My members were just devastated when the announcement came out that they were going to build 4 ferries in China. But they were extremely devastated when they found out, because nobody knew, that the federal government was actually loaning the money to BC Ferries to go and build in China. So there's a lot of criticism going at both levels of government. for how this project went. This project was in the can for 7 years. That's when it started, and at no time did BC Ferries come to the industry and ask what the industry could do. The only thing that they said to the industry all the way through was that this project will be done on price and price alone. There's no value in Canadian workers, and that's basically what they've said to us. So we're extremely frustrated with the whole process.
Perhaps Ms. Bork. Yeah.
Well, if I could weigh in and say two things. One, the federal shipbuilding strategy has created many, many jobs for my members, and they're very, very proud of the work that they're doing on those projects. But also to say, when I use that example of the three-legged stool, that our shipbuilding industry, it's more than just the North Vancouver, Seaspan shipyard, right? It's the Victoria shipyards, it's the Esquimalt dry docks, it's Point Hope, it's Allied shipyard, and that what we need is sort of an ecosystem where we have that civilian shipbuilding also happening. So different components are being built. We're spreading that work around, that you have work for apprentices as well as journey people. And right now, we're completely off balance. We have a big push on federal national defense and then nothing, and then a big push and then nothing. And we really need to bring the whole ecosystem back into alignment.
Ms. Skidmore, over to you if you have any comment on that question as well.
I mean, I would just echo what both speakers before me have said. This is, priority here. And we heard immediately from workers when we heard that this contract for these ships were going, offshore over to China. And, workers here in this province in British Columbia and across the country are ready to do the work. They're hungry for the work. And as we're looking, to the future and our commitment, the federal government's commitment, the provincial government's commitment, and BC Ferries' commitment to working people and our economy here in British Columbia, that investment needs to be done, and there needs to be ties to it. Thanks.
This is a generational investment. Davie Shipyards called this RFP by BC Ferries the largest non-governmental procurement in Canada's history. We've also heard from Eric McNeely that in China, the PRC, they actually have a hybrid model where they subsidize both their civilian and their military because it keeps that work coming. So I recognize, and conservatives recognize, that it is the workers that are going to be bearing the costs of this, both in terms of their tax dollars and a missed opportunity. And I just want to start first with Ms. Burke. Ms. Burke, you've pointed out the outrageous decisions by the Canadian Infrastructure Bank to not even blink when BC Ferries came to them and asked them for a below-market loan for over $1 billion, and there was no Canadian content requirement. Do you believe that the Canadian Infrastructure Bank has lost its way?
Well, I think first I wanted to talk about that piece around civilian and national defense in shipbuilding, and to say that there's a saying in our industry that our shipbuilding sector is a three-legged stool, that it is national defense, it is private industry like cruise and fishing vessels, and it is civilian shipbuilding. And it's the three sort of pieces of work that keep us moving and allow for skills training, allow for growth, and make for a vibrant industry. And when you have one of those legs taken away, in this case, civilian shipbuilding, it really causes a paralysis in the industry. Now, on the Canada Infrastructure Bank, I've made it clear that I think that their decision is not in alignment with Canada's and Canadian values. And I think that they should be required to provide a lens to the decisions they make on, does this create jobs? Does this create opportunities? Does this benefit Canadian communities? I will say that it is incredibly frustrating as a British Columbian who needs significant investment in our ferry fleet to be in a position where we may be questioning whether there's federal support. And so I do reject this black and white, either the loan is canceled or it's not canceled. We need federal support for ferry construction in British Columbia. And I I hope I'm articulating that well, that we need these dollars to flow to the West Coast.
Well, you absolutely are. And I sense the palpable anger coming from workers who believe that they have the know-how if government, like other governments, saw the value in doing it here. Now, both David Eby and Mark Carney wrapped themselves in the maple leaf, said, let's build Canada strong, let's buy Canadian, let's move faster than we ever have before. And so one of the things I do know is frustrating to your members is that C-SPAN actually funded economic studies and presented them to BC Ferries in 2023. I believe it's called the Shiroka Report. It was done by a consulting group. BC Ferries has failed in its to produce those documents that this particular committee has, which I believe gave an argument for doing it here in Canada, an alternative vision. Do you believe that BC Ferries should come clean and submit that evidence so we can have a full conversation about the economic benefits of seeing these ships done in Canada?
So, of course, as an organization of many unions that were lobbying to have this work come to British Columbia, we were aware of the Shiroka study. A lot of the economic benefit analysis in terms of job creation, in terms of how taxes would flow back into the community, all of that came from that report, and we've read it. I was surprised that it wasn't disclosed
to the committee so that we can really get to the heart of this matter and present a full recommendation to the Government of Canada.
Sorry, the very first part of your question was cut off. Do you mind to repeat it?
So you believe, though, that the BC Ferries has an obligation to this committee and to the public to submit those documents?
I believe it's in the public's interest for that report to be made public.
Thank you very much. Now, Patillo Bridge and closer to Mr. Greaves, the Johnson Street Bridge, both had considerable delays because of cheap Chinese steel. Are there concerns, and this could be to Ms. Skidmore, this could be to Ms. Bork, of the same kind of things happening here?
10-second response, please.
Could you repeat? It didn't get picked up.
Oh, apologies. I was deferring to Ms. Bork. These are her members building these projects.
Yes, we have concerns. My members are literally building the new Patillo Bridge and have experienced significant challenges with quality of steel.